This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high-risk and challenging filming and time-lapse, covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.
And we're live. Welcome to this week's Safer Than Your Average. It's been a while, but we're back. And what a guest we've got for you today. We've got Ben Legg. Ben, if you just want to come in and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Ben or Benjamin Legg, depending if you're telling me off or not. And I'm the Global Health, Safety and Wellbeing Director at Ferrovial.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen the format of the podcast. We like to just go right back to the beginning with our guests and find out a little bit about their background, where they grew up and their early life. So if you just want to launch in, Ben, and we'll go from there.
Well, where to start? It's a few years ago now, although it only feels like yesterday. I grew up in the UK. My family is from East London in Canning Town. My father's a butcher, or well was, although I still think he fancies a go every once in a while. Yeah, I went to school at Southend High School for Boys. I didn't go to university. I don't have a degree, which I know in this day and age some people look at and go, why not? But I think, education and academia fits certain people, and for me it wasn't a great fit, and I wasn't sure really leaving school what was it I wanted to do. At the time, I knew a guy who had a bricklaying contractor, and there was something about construction that I quite liked, and in summer holiday I was working with him, and perhaps thinking back on some of those times, maybe health and safety could have been well served then when I was working with him in house building. But he taught me a lot. He taught me a huge amount and encouraged me. So I went back to night school. So I was working during the day and then going to college at night. Did ONC, HNC and construction studies, really learned the industry. And then he also encouraged me to join a big company and get on one of their programs, and that's where I joined a company called Countryside Properties, who,
I remember them.
In Brentwood, Essex. I owe them a huge amount. I went on a 2-year management program with them, so I went in every single department, from the accounts to IT, everything. And then went out on site. I wanted to be a site manager. And at the end of this 2-year program, you could say to the chairman, Alan Cherry, who's sadly deceased, but his sons still run the business there. You could name what job you wanted to do. And the guy who looked after health and safety and the training element, so the young guys that went through their training program, was a guy called John Smith. It was his real name, bless him. Many a story talking about John. I don't know, my time with him, we had a little game of golf sometimes on a Friday afternoon, and he had a nice car, and he made the job fun. And at the end of it, the chairman, I had a few questions about safety, and I moved from this sort of site management position to working with John in health and safety. He was the only guy in health and safety at the time. When we spoke to the chairman about it, or when John did, should I say, the chairman said, has he cut his hair? Has he taken his earring out? And is it because you play golf, John, and don't think I don't know that? And it went from there, really. I had a great time at Countryside. That training program really gave me the foundation of understanding business, but also understanding my audience. I had many times, there's a guy called Keith Pryor. He used to eat concrete for breakfast, that's for sure. I remember one day John dropping me off at the site saying, you've got to go and do the inspection. And I said, well, you're coming, aren't you? He said, yeah. Anyway, we're in his Sierra gear. There you go. That's giving the year away a bit. And I got out of the car, got all our stuff out the boot, and John locked the doors, did the passenger window down a little bit. He said, I'll be back in a couple of hours, and drove off and
Excellent.
just left me. And I went in, and Keith was like, go and do what you want, son. He sat behind his desk, and I'm like, well, I need you, Keith. And he just ignored me, reading his newspaper. So I went round and did an inspection of the project and went back and did the report as you used to do those days. Well, I guess we're still doing that in health and safety, sadly, but anyway. And I wrote it out and I put it under his newspaper and said, Keith, you need to talk about this. And he put his newspaper down, tore it up, put it in the bin. So I wrote it out again. I slid it under his paper and he put his paper down. He said, you're not going away, are you? I said, no, I'd just rather have a conversation with you about this. And he picked up the report. He looked at it and he was like this. And he went, 50%? 50, bleep, bleep, bleep percent. I said, yeah. And this was when hard hats were all coming in. And he said, it's not 50%. Well, so there's 10 people out there. There's 5 people wearing hard hats. So, maybe I didn't do so well at school with maths, but certainly that's 50% in my book. And he put it up and he put it down. He just looked at me, smiled, and he said, you've passed, you'll go far, you will. And he became one of my best, strange way, mentors in construction. He knew how to get people to do things. Yeah, he was a rough diamond, but he was a damn good guy to learn from. And then I ended up, John retired, and the words he said to me when he retired, never stop learning. He said, I learned something today on his 65th, year, and the day he left, he said, I learned something today, and I hold that, in my head every single day, that I don't have all the answers, and I do learn something every day. And then from there, I was the group health and safety manager. I was 23. It's too soon. It was way too soon. And I wasn't ready for it. And I knew I wasn't ready for it. And I think perhaps sometimes we don't think about that enough. We need to be ready for some of these things, or we need to be in touching distance of being able to be successful in that next role. And I knew I wasn't, and I knew I wanted to backfill my experience. And I went to the chairman with a letter of resignation. He looked at me and he just said, I know what it is. Explain to me why you're leaving. And I said, I want to backfill my experience. I need to learn more before I can take on this sort of role. And he looked at me and he said, Ben, it's the right thing to do. And he said, whenever you want to come back, phone me. Go with my blessing. And I guess that's a theme all through my career. I've been very fortunate with my the people that I've worked for. And I left and went to Wilmot Dixon. Yeah. I'd never true inner city refurbishment, really complex, challenging work in London. Looked after London region for Wilmot Dixon. It was a step up. It was a different experience. I did that and then thought, I've never been resident on a project. It's very different to visiting. Yeah. So I was fortunate there was a role with Caverna that latterly became Skanska.
I remember
and they had a job called Woolwich Hospital. And they wanted a resident health and safety manager, and I went and joined that. Interesting interview because one of the guys said, do you play golf? I said, yes. And he said, you'll do fine. I thought, well, nothing, maybe that gets me in the door, then so what? And I was resident on that project for a while. Skanska bought out Caverna. And then this thing called the Gherkin appeared on the horizon, Swiss Re in the City of London, the highest tower to be built since NatWest Tower. A lot of people saw it as controversial because it was on the site of the IRA bomb with the Baltic Exchange. And it was incredibly different by design, Foster design. And Skanska said, we'd like you to go and be the safety manager on it. I was one of the youngest safety managers they had. The project director there said, not sure about this Ben guy. what does he know about high rise? And I said, I don't know anything about high rise. He said, but looking around London, there's not too much being built. And he just looked at me and went, I said, so we'll learn together, won't we? I said, but it's only the height that differs. You know, the footprint is the same pretty much, except on the gherkin, it's a bit like a gherkin. And I went on there, got halfway through it, loved it. It was an amazing project to work on.
Complex construction on that one as well, wasn't there? And for the methodology to put
yeah,
together.
You know, CDM, very early days of CDM, lots of interest from HSE, Health and Safety Executive, perhaps, you know, interest from a designer's point of view, so from the Fosters and Partners point of view, Victor Boykalandia, the steel guys, you know, how are we going to build this thing? Because it wasn't, you know, the circumference altered every stage. So, you know, super interesting from a health and safety point of view, inner city project, never been done before. Wow. And it was really and I think every safety professional has that moment in their career, which I call like a diving board, which just launches you into a different realm of competence and visibility. And Swiss Re was my diving board. It was the project that I guess put me a little bit in the spotlight. And then, you know, PFI, I then, you know, had another amazing boss. You know, it is incredible. I've been very lucky. A guy called Dave Shadwell, who is the managing director of Skanska UK Building, formerly Trollope and Coles and all of that. An amazing guy again. And I became their, you know, Skanska UK Building health and safety lead. Loved every minute of it. Mainly London based. Then PFI took off and they gave me the PFI business to look after as well. And suddenly I'm dealing with two huge businesses, one of them, you know, going about their business fairly steady, another one with PFI, you know, and most people will remember the early days of PFI, hospitals, education, healthcare. That just went woof, crazy. Had an incredible managing director, Simon Hipperson. Again, a great guy. I remember Dave Shadwell saying to me, you can't do both. He said, if it was my choice, he said, I'm putting Dave's hat on. He said, I'd say stay with us, but you need to go places. You need to go and fulfill your ability, some of which I didn't really understand what that meant, because, you know, perhaps I like to think that I'm quite humble. I don't sort of feel the need to tell people whether I'm any good or not. I let them make that choice.
And it's one of the reasons I reached out and asked you to be on the podcast, Ben. You're very, very well known in industry, but you're not like some of the big names that are out there promoting themselves all of the time. You kind of sit in the background and let your work answer for itself.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm like as a you know, as a team leader. I try to let people play, you know, and be there for them and encourage them and push them forward, because that's what people have done for me, and it worked for me. So I think, well, if it works for me, you know, and I like it, why wouldn't I do the same?
Yeah.
And I ended up running the PFI business, and then ended up looking after Skanska UK PLC. An amazing company, formative years, progressed through them, but I knew I'd never worked internationally. So again, I was thinking, what are the bits missing in my experience that when I retire, I can sit back and say, I did it. I did what I thought I needed to do to make a difference. Carillion, you know, rest in peace, came along, a guy called Richard Howson, which I guess a lot of people know. But I would say, as a boss, another amazing boss, and said, would you be interested in going with Carillion to this place called Dubai? I'm like, no idea where that is, but sounds all right. But in the meantime, you know, my CEO at Skanska, David Fyson, I told him about it. And again, you know, I'll keep saying this, I was very fortunate, and David said to me, get on a plane, go to Dubai and see if you like it. And when you come back, if you say to me you want to go and do it, he said, you go with my blessing. He said, because you've been a loyal servant to Skanska, and you've done some amazing things for us. And I went to Dubai, and a mentor I had at the time, Bill Hayes, he said to me, if you can go and do it there, you can do it anywhere.
Mhm.
And ignore the people who might criticize you for it. He said, because you don't deserve the right to criticize something unless you go and be part of it.
That's it. Yeah.
And I've always held that in the back of my mind with people questioning me sometimes. I say, well, if you can do it in a highly regulated environment, you still don't get it right. Well, you come and do it in with a bunch of guys who actually really need our help, want our support and deserve our support in places that don't have a regulatory framework, perhaps don't have clients that are as mature. Doesn't make them wrong. It just makes them different. And I went with Richard, and we had an extraordinary few years at Carillion, I think, with Jason Rowley back in the UK as my sort of functional boss.
Mhm.
Again, people cared for me and looked out for me, and we did, just amazing things in the Middle East, I think. And then my time at Carillion, I thought I've never worked for a consultant, in that space between client and contractor. That there's plenty of people that exist in that sphere, and Mace was one of them. And I liked what Mace were about in London. I'd seen a lot of them.
Mhm.
Andy Brown, again, another guy that I had still do have a lot of respect for. And I joined Mace and looked after international business.
Mhm.
They'd never had a person doing that for Mace International before. I think, again, we did some great things. And then AECOM, the US engineering company, came along and knocked on the door and said, hey, what do you think of us then? I'm like, what's the role? Vice President, Health and Safety for Middle East. Yeah, great. Let's give it a go. Different vibe, different feel, slightly different scope of work, certainly different geography. So, other things to bring into the mix. Spent a lot of time with ACOM doing some crazy things, and then the gig that I've got now came up with Ferrovial. And if you don't know Ferrovial, they do everything from airports, toll roads, construction business, mobility business. So we have, shares in Heathrow. We're got a construction business blasting tunnels through Canary Islands. We've got car sharing schemes in Madrid and Paris. So now we're involved with building vertiports in Florida. So it's a pretty diverse business, and I get to wear two hats here, the construction lead and the group corporate lead. So it's been a really interesting journey. I've got to work in every continent. So from Russia to North America, now South America, and Europe and Poland and Asia, Vietnam, and probably the strangest place I ever went to was Saipan, building a casino.
Excellent. So that's quite a comprehensive career as well, Ben, and quite broad.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest challenge in health and safety so far?
The biggest challenge, I think, is understanding that nobody's wrong. They just have a slightly different view. So you have to take what you know and apply it in a way that is understood and adds value and means something.
Mhm.
So I think the biggest challenge has always been to work out what fits, where the business is at, what the geography looks like, and where are you going to genuinely add value and just not more noise.
Mhm.
So I think that's always the biggest challenge for me is relevance.
Yeah.
Make sure what you do is relevant.
Mhm. Excellent. Thanks for that, Ben. So, quite a comprehensive career. You've worked on almost every continent in the world. What's coming up in the future? What's next for Ben?
I guess you never know. Businesses evolve, and if you're in a business and they are they venture off into something like vertiports with electric air taxis, that's going to be part of your remit, and you have to understand it. And how does health and safety and well-being fit into that product? Or if they choose to go to a country, what's next? I think for Ben, I get a kick out of seeing teams grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, this team that I'm fortunate to lead at the moment is a growing team. It's maturing. There's some great opportunities, and I guess here and now is doing what I can to support them to be better, and for Ovial to be better. In the 2 years that I've been here now, put a whole new strategy in place. We've brought a whole new feel around health and safety and well-being. We've put context around it. We've made it relevant, and we're starting to understand that this isn't something that is separate. It's absolutely integrated into how a business is run.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I guess if you find yourself slightly left field and you're only really being spoken to when there's a problem, step back and really think about, where are my touch points?
Yep. How do you integrate back into the business?
Yeah.
How do you be that friendly face, the support function that's there to assist the business in its day-to-day operations?
I mean, I was asked the other day about, what sort of metric do you apply to your team? And I say, you get one of these things and you can track how much time outgoing and incoming. And I say, how many times do non-safety people call you?
What a metric that is as well. That's an excellent one to judge on.
And I measure myself against it. How often are people calling me for support, advice, a coffee, a beer, a lunch, a debate? I think that's a subtle measure of, are we adding value?
Yeah, definitely. So you've had such a long and illustrious career, Ben.
Not so much of the long.
What advice would you give to someone starting out in health and safety today?
Read, listen, get some great mentors. You'd be surprised. A guy reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, he sent me a message and he said, you're probably not going to answer me, but I thought I'd chance it. Would you be able to give me 5 minutes of your time? Here's my number. And I just picked up the phone to him and said, what do you want to know? And he's like, I can't believe you phoned me. I said, why? Mentors to me are really critical, and learn the business that you're trying to invest your knowledge into. I think, in that thing that John Smith said to me, you never stop learning. So, and it's true. So always be seeking out who are the trailblazers, who are the people that are trying to do something different, not always getting it right. Build your network with intelligent, common sense people, and a few that are a little bit, renegade. Yeah. Because
you need the renegades, don't you? It's where the new ideas come from, and the slightly from left field ideas developed.
Yeah, and someone said to me, if you've got 2 people and they're both agreeing, you don't need 2 people.
Yep.
So, and look for opportunities. Bill Hayes, he said to me, someone giving you an opportunity is one thing. You creating the opportunity is a completely different level of thinking.
Yeah. I read a book a couple of years ago now, and it said, build your own board. Who would you want to be on your executive board, and make them your mentors? And I developed that, and I still speak to a massive network of people now to guide me in the process. And since I started doing that, I've seen my career grow exponentially. I've bounced ideas off them. Even this was developed with a couple of mentors that I'd spoken to and said, thinking about doing a podcast. Well, what are you trying to achieve from it? Well, I want to give people information that are starting out in safety and learn more about the people that I'm engaging with, and it will be fun.
Yeah, fun. You say a word there, fun, and perhaps not many people associate health and safety and fun in the same sentence, but I always say that. You can do extraordinary things. You really can. You know, the best times of my career so far have been when we've had some fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's been immense tragedy over the years,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget any of those events.
Mm-hmm.
But 90% of the time, we get it right.
Yeah.
And we spend an inordinate amount of time on the 10% we get wrong. It's not to say you don't spend time on that. Of course you should,
Mm-hmm.
but recognise how successful we can be.
Definitely.
But yeah, I guess, you know, for the younger people, and I worry that people come out with a degree and think I should be now a health and safety director.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to me, that word competence is very, very important.
Yeah.
If you're in a country, go and work international.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the most extraordinary support of my career,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's made a huge difference because I appreciate the different views of life.
Excellent. Yep. It's definitely an ambition of mine eventually to work internationally and get that experience different cultures and develop it through. I go
Because
back
nobody is right.
Yeah. I go back to my early career. Some of the best advice I got at the start of my career was, if opportunity, and I actually had this as a little sign on all of my desks right up until we became permanently working from home. But I had a little sign that said, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. And at the start of my career, I went out, I worked for free, I chapped doors and said, I'll work for free if you teach me what you're doing and how you're doing it. And really developed from there to push on to that next level. And it led on building that network and being able to develop into a full-time role. It's not for everyone, and not everyone's got that option available to them. But if you can, it's definitely a good place to start.
You'd be surprised, you know, how many opportunities are actually out there if you really want it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the people I admire in the world of safety today have a very diverse, you know, footprint, experience. You know, it makes all the difference. And you know, and as I say, these guys that I admire now, and I guess mentor me still now, just have that certain exploration about them.
One of the questions I get asked quite a lot then, and it's probably quite a good one to put to yourself, is mid-level management, so mid-level safety management that are looking to break into that upper echelon of safety, into the C-suite, if you like, into the directorship role. What advice would you give to them?
What, to break into the kind of role that I've got now?
Yeah.
I think it's a balance of technical experience and your behavioural style and your understanding of business. You know, I see a lot on LinkedIn of people saying, oh, you know, I've done a diploma in safety, I'm now going to do a master's, and I'm going to do a double master's in safety. I'm thinking, why don't you go and do a finance degree, or why don't you go and do a psychology you know, course of some description? Build your attractiveness to a business. You know, I think that is a thing that the health and safety profession perhaps don't make the most of. We, by the way that we manage things, risk, businesses are interested in risk. They're interested in reputation. They're interested in their brand. They're interested in their share price. The investors are interested. Get that commercial, and it's not a dirty word, get that business language, get that understanding of industry aside to the health and safety. Yeah, because that, I think, I talk about health and safety perhaps, I don't know, 10% of my week, maybe. The rest of it is building relationships, having conversations, understanding how we're going to do something, throwing into the mix, well, what's our plan to do that? How are we going to do that and not put our brand at risk? What's the quality of individual we need to be able to deliver that? So broaden the experience, and I think that's where big businesses want to see a health and safety person, not as important, but as valuable.
Excellent advice, Ben. Thank you very much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed having you on. It's been a great experience, and I've really enjoyed hearing about your career.
Yeah, and maybe you touched on it. I don't often talk about myself. I find it a little bit strange, but it's interesting to reflect sometimes, and maybe that's something else to do, to stop and reflect, and where can you add value. And I did that 2 years ago and ended up saying I'm happy to mentor more people. And also I'm now a non-exec director of 2 businesses, 2 young startups, one called Navitech and one called Repple. And they're young guys who have got some brilliant ideas, and you kind of look and see, how can you help them get the visibility? How can you help them bring to market a great product? And perhaps that's another thing that we perhaps don't think about, giving back pro bono. I don't get anything out of it, nothing whatsoever. But other than feeling like I'm using my experience for good.
Excellent. And it's so important to give that level of commitment to give back to industry as well, isn't it? I've seen it with the IPD and chartered fellow groups that I've been mentoring on. We've successfully coached 55 people from graduate status up to chartered, and we've also got 5 now through the chartered fellowship interview process, which is phenomenal when you think there's only 550 chartered fellows worldwide, you know. So really good setup.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, give it. And people have invested that time in me, so why wouldn't I do it for others? And like I say, I look back at the teams that I've been privileged to work with, and seeing a lot of those guys now in positions the same as me, that gives me a bit of a kick, if I'm honest with you. I don't think there's anything better than that, seeing people succeed. Excellent. But you got to work at it. It's not for free.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I appreciate you coming on, Ben. Thank you very much.
This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high-risk and challenging filming and time-lapse, covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.